On the 21st of November this year, Deemo Reborn by Riot Games will be releasing on PlayStation 4, a 3D ground-up full reimagining of the original game, Deemo, originally released on iOS and Android. And as I'm basically the only English-speaking channel on YouTube of reasonable size that covers Riot games to any significant degree, of course I'm going to cover this game. What do you think I am? Not masochistic. Now here's the thing, you probably watched this in-depth scientific, totally not subjective breakdown by some attractive himbo where he stacked rhythm games into a tier list and proudly proclaimed while placing it in S that Deemo is one of the most elegantly put together rhythm games of all time. And I don't think myself that he was alone in that assumption, with its original iOS version receiving an editor's choice, immense critical praise, and garnering ports on other systems like the PS Vita and Nintendo Switch. In the niche circle it occupies, Deemo is one of the more talked about rhythm games in the sphere right now, and I'm gonna be stabbing my flag into this nearly 6-year-old horse so I can fucking educate y'all, because either one, you've never played Deemo before, which means you're missing out on one of the most Kino fucking video games in existence. Kino. Or two, sometime after this video came out, you've only played Deemo Reborn and you're an uneducated plebeian that doesn't know how good the original game was. Basically, not only do I really want to break down what makes this game to sell it to those outside of the scene and hopefully illustrate what makes it stand out in the weird contradictory genre/subgenre that is the rhythm game, but if in the event Reborn starts to really take off with the PlayStation crowd, I really don't want the merits of the original Deemo to go unnoticed, and I'd really like those waiting for Reborn with me to take notes of what makes the original great and whether or not Reborn will be able to carry those elements when it comes out. My perspective on things? What I have here is the flawed masterpiece that's been holding sentimental value for me since 2014. It ranks among the ever-fluctuating top 5 of my favourite games of all time, and is one of the many games that has contributed to the Joe of today. I'm not even kidding when I say that if it wasn't for Deemo, I probably wouldn't have the passion for not just rhythm games, but music in general that I do right now, and as unimpressive as it looks at first glance, a truly remarkable experience is peeking from behind the covers that deserves to be called by yours truly the standard in how to make a good rhythm game. I just like saying that a lot with the games I like, it's hilarious. Let's take a moment to think about this. What makes Deemo work? Because we could be little bitch babies here and say some surface level shit like, oh no dude, the game's just fun. I mean, the soundtrack's really nice. It had a plot. I like playing games for the plot. And like, yeah, valid, but we need to go deeper. And to do that, I think we gotta start from the top and make use of everyone's favourite source for games critique. The anecdote! For me to illustrate Deemo, I want to take you through how the game's constructed from beginning to end and how I felt during my experience, and hopefully we can isolate something from there. I don't even want this video to be some thorough discussion where I have to make sure my points are correct and in line with some established school of game design. I just want to communicate my feelings towards the game here and now in full honesty so I can gush about the thing I like. It's really annoying because I like to be all lighthearted and funny haha with my videos, but I feel like a lot of this is going to be super serious business. Like, I ain't about that shit. It often leads to something really boring, hence why I hate most gaming video essays, but I literally have no idea how I can make this entertaining while still making my point. Maybe if I just put up a Vine every couple of minutes.
Rule number 1, never trust anybody.
Oh yeah, and by the way, there are many different versions of Deemo, but don't fret. Whenever we reach a point in the video where I refer to a specific version, I'll just show off this handy little chart to take away any potential confusion of which port you should get. Thank you. After an introductory cutscene and probably sitting at the menu screen for 5 minutes because woof, that theme song's got good vibes. Deemo is incredibly straightforward. The title character of Deemo is a tall, lonely creature adorned with a suit and bow tie, unable to convey any emotions, and sits in an unknown secluded tower playing piano to himself. Said tower seeming to be a single, dimly lit room as gentle, atmospheric piano music plays. Darting over to the play button and choosing the first song collection available, you're met with a traditional rhythm game song list where you select a track in difficulty mode, each track accompanied with an art piece featuring Deemo. And it's upon selecting a track you're given the simple tutorial of tapping the screen or pressing buttons in time with the music to catch falling piano notes. That is the entirety of Deemo's gameplay summed up. It's a basic falling note rhythm game where you tap whatever you see to make music. And something that acts as both a strength and a weakness of Deemo as a game is that one would be quick to conclude whether or not they'll enjoy it from this first impression alone, but through small implementations that tie these minimal gameplay mechanics to the game world, Deemo, the mobile game I spent £2 on after finding it as a Vsauce recommendation, found a way to surprise me at every turn. And it all starts with Dream. Dream by Radpit is for the majority of Deemo's player base the first song they ever played, and I cannot think of a song in this entire setlist that would make for a better introduction, not just for the here and now, but for much later as we play. Strictly gameplay-wise, it is a fun song no matter the difficulty that has you play at varying speeds, and the general orchestral gusto of the music makes newcomers feel immensely powerful, like the piece builds up on its own from just a few tabs. But there's even more to discover under the veneer. Dream is a piece containing numerous feelings and emotions. The piano and strings are gentle and gradually ascend as time goes on, sending off its climax with so much strength only to close out with something soft and contemplative. It's upbeat and cheerful, but in that bittersweet kind of way, like nothing's wrong, but things could be bigger and better. That feeling it encapsulates is loneliness. The art piece we see is Deemo, alone and sat on a pile of chairs that are drenched in overgrowth. The seats surrounding him are not only empty, but have been empty for a long time. As the piece gets jaunty and carefree, we hear a crowded ambience, people chatting, clanging utensils, caught in the bustle of life and the passage of time as Deemo continues to play to himself. The song is happy, Deemo is happy, and the player feels happy in turn as they tap away. They're filled with the euphoria of pure bittersweet joy, and as things ascend more and more, the piece just ends. And I like to think at this point Deemo's fantasy ends. He snaps back into reality and remembers his loneliness, but thinks about that brief glimpse of joy he found from his music. And bam, we've just learned about Deemo as a character through one song, one art piece, and no dialogue. A creature who is alone, and has been alone for a long time, but dreams big and is excited to see what the world has to offer for someone like him when he one day leaves his tower. And even if I wasn't able to verbalize all of that on the spot the moment I played it for the first time, it was still a feeling. It was a sensation that was present and told me deep down that I was in for something special. Some time passes as more songs are played and we unlock a cutscene. A trapdoor located at the top of the tower opens up and a little girl comes falling down into Deemo's arms. She doesn't seem to go by a name, presumably because she's lost her memory, but despite this, the two befriend each other. The girl has a companion for this misadventure, and the lonely Deemo we spent a few minutes with finally has a friend. After the girl lands, a door opens up to the side and we find that the building is actually an explorable environment with many rooms to uncover, and the girl will provide her own thoughts to what's going on, wondering why Deemo doesn't speak, why he's being so nice to her, and whether he's ever seen the outside of the tower. On top of an odd third resident that's been hiding in the library, a lady wearing a hood and mask who seems to be unpleasant to the both of them, especially when they notice a tree sapling in the piano that grows whenever music is played, and the two make a plan to use it to climb out of the trapdoor. It's small and minimal in functionality, but the tower is one of my favourite environments in a game, to the point of where I wish I could be there. This dark, eerie, but soft, comforting castle with such an ambiguous layout that you're curious to discover the other rooms, from an attic with out-of-place decorations, an upper level that's only accessible by climbing up the tree, and so much more, combined with somber ambience that acts as this form of downtime to enjoy in between the increasingly intense soundtrack. And I think this bizarre dreamlike presentation in the game is what makes the soundtrack so enjoyable. Deemo has a collection of different genres and styles, with the only common thread being piano, and I can tell you here and now that so many of the early tracks are so weird and out of place, I don't think I would have enjoyed them as much as I did on their own without Deemo's complementing environmental design. Here's a take and a half. Regardless of someone's actual music taste, Deemo's collection 1A and 1B are what have to be one of the greatest soundtracks in a rhythm game because of the supplemental atmosphere that allows you to get immersed in the music. These aren't just playlists of any random songs the developers could scrape up at the time, and even to the smallest of degrees, there's a feeling of purpose and attention to detail. With beautiful artwork with consistent elements between each piece, like the characters and architecture, combined with the story setting that these songs are being played in the tower here and now, Deemo accomplishes with a licensed soundtrack what originally crafted OSTs in other genres have accomplished for years. The feeling that every song has its own story to tell, its own universe, or its own image to put in your head of what the setting contains. There's a connection to the game in the music, and if there isn't, they apply a connection through the visuals and atmosphere. It fills you in with character motivations, not just with Dream conveying Deemo's loneliness, but also the Little Girls headliner 9.8 by Millie, a pop rock track about loss and reunion, which raises questions about the girl's past. And even if you can't come to these gigabrain conclusions in the moment about whether or not a song has intentional symbolic meaning to an area of the game, which, spoiler alert, most of them don't, it still adds to that hazy, dreamlike atmosphere with tracks like Electron, Undo, Run Go Run, and Utopia Sphere. As you play, the game is fueling the brain's creative juices with inspiration. You can imagine the song echoing and resonating in the tower, and it makes you excited to explore and find more songs, and it makes all of that monotonous tapping away all the more passionate. So let's get a baby bit technical and talk about game and sound design real quick. Deemo's sound design is trash, but I love it. But it's trash, but I love it. Like all rhythm games, Deemo felt the need to introduce a gimmick of some kind to let it stand out from the crowd, and the gimmick it went for was not something strictly mechanical, but instead an audio complement to the gameplay. The polarizing hot mess that is key sounds. Basically, it's not just the music that plays in Deemo, and akin to games like Guitar Hero, every time you hit a target, a sampled piano note will play in time with your taps. Meaning if you were to play a chart perfectly, you would in theory hear a recreated piano track synced with your inputs over the existing song. This system is a mixed bag that can ruin a small minority of the setlist, but not only is it optional with the ability to turn it off or even rebalance the audio levels against the main music track, but for me it's so imperative to the experience of the game that I dare say it's actually less fun to play with the key sounds off. But before that, let's have a little tangent about video game stories. Yes, I am a very bad disjointed writer, I know it. Deemo's biggest strength is something that applies to basically any and all rhythm games I've ever given a high rating, which is that rhythm games are not and should not be a replacement for listening to music, because, well, then you just listen to music, wouldn't you? Standout rhythm games provide something unique in the mechanics and sound design and take advantage of the fact that they're games to provide an interactive layer, an exhilarating experience unlike listening to the song on its own to get players immersed, and I think that's something Deemo passes with flying colours. Firstly, there's just the fact that the gameplay loop is very obviously presented as you playing the piano to reach a certain tree height. Deemo playing the piano to grow the tree is the inciting moment in the story that moves it forward, and the tree growing depending on your play activity rather than whenever you finish a specific song puts you in more direct control of the progression rather than the usual rhythm game story mode format of a cutscene followed by a random chart. This means there's a layer of synergy between the writing and the gameplay that justifies one another, so they don't feel like distractions of each other that make the player impatient or have skewed priorities. Think about those rhythm game story modes you played where it's just overdrawn cutscenes and dialogue before the game then tells you you can play a random song from the setlist that has nothing to do with the story events to fill an arbitrary gameplay quota. It's like a bad fighting game story mode. Regardless of the actual writing and character development, this is bad storytelling either way by the standards of the medium because there's no synergy going on that keeps things related, well-paced, and flowing. This is something other genres like immersive sims and even linear AAA action games have been able to nail for years. Non-interactive story elements like cutscenes are all well and good, but only really during a moment of rest in the story's events where there's very little opportunity for gameplay to take its place. Otherwise, you can just use the gameplay itself or a presentation element within the gameplay to carry the story along, like visual storytelling, text documents, optional dialogue, etc. And Deemo does that. It has cutscenes, but only short and sweet ones on certain tree milestones, and very rarely is Deemo playing music during the game without your own input. And when those cutscenes are done, it leaves you with the one object in the room that has a tangible, physical impact on the plot, and lets you play it at your own pace while getting immersed in mechanics and music that make you feel part of the game's universe instead of a spectator watching from a distance that pokes the setlist with a 40-foot long stick. Which I'm gonna elaborate on way more once we get to the ending of this game. Like, say we had a rhythm game with a story about a thief who steals shit. What sounds better and more immersive, rhythm game mechanics that coincide with the thief's stealth operations, or some random loot playing that has nothing to do with what the thief is doing. That sounds like a no-brainer, like yeah, story and gameplay should be relevant to each other, but for some reason, some rhythm games don't do this. Some do this though, and it's cool. Anyway, rant over, sorry, I only mentioned immersive sims and Thief just to piss off my friend who's really into them. Love you, Joe! So what does all that have to do with key sounds? The biggest downside to key sounds is they drown out the music, have a very aggressive tone and feel to them, and just generally make the game feel heavy in terms of auditory feedback. And while the upsides are all of those things, the key sounds can really mess up the tone and feel of the original song, and tracks like Brian Crane's Imagining straight up need the sounds turned off without getting absolutely butchered. But when it works, it really fucking works, and sucker punches the senses to give you that feeling of playing an instrument, that intense concentration where you can only hear your contribution, the thundering strikes you add to each song's emotional climax. It adds a texture of sorts to the traditional gameplay that provides an experience far removed from just listening to the tracks on their own, that by comparison, playing without this feedback just makes your inputs feel empty and paper thin. This is also why I recommend to people who play the Switch version of the game to play with a touchscreen instead of a controller, because all of this is still preserved somewhat as you click away at the buttons, but even so is only heightened by the sensation of slamming your fingers down on a touchscreen, and it means that even the most repetitive of songs that have you spam the same backing notes over and over carry their own weight that makes you want to crank up the volume and play over and over again. Key sounds are sloppy and only achieve the desired effect depending on the song you play, but to me, combined with the setting and controls, they're an example of a small implementation that allows the rhythm game to provide a different experience that standalone music provides on its own, and some of the more dramatic and violent songs I feel are only better by making the key sounds louder than the original track. A Turtle's Heart by Millie, when listened to on its own, is a masterful and pleasing track about being complacent and living in the past, but in Deemo, on speed scale 7.5 with its key sounds bumped up to 8, with a good pair of headphones, is a violent thrashing where every chord feels like a strike to the chest as you hammer away at the screen with all of your might. God, that's good. Just listen to Millie, please. Miracle Milk is their best album, but don't listen to Millennium Mother first, it's their weakest one. It's got a lot of shit on it. When the tree grows to 20 meters, you're met with the first ending, and yes, you heard me right, the first ending of this game, where the tree blooms more and more before suddenly and mysteriously halting in its growth. The girl proclaims through some optional in-game dialogue that even if she can't go home, she's happy to stay in the tower with Deemo, and after a credit sequence, we're given the whole to-be-continued foreshadowing about the plot wrapping up with a new update or a sequel or whatever, which is still way more communication than anything Rayok ever provided for the 1.0 ending of Citus 2. Okay, I promise, I'll stop. It's just too good to poke fun at, guys. Citus 2 is shit. And after all of that, we unlock a new track that is also really damn important to the payoff of the game, Magnolia by M2U and Gariri. A song which when played on hard mode is a level 10, which at the time was the highest difficulty level in the game. While somewhat more forgiving compared to the charts you can play right now, Magnolia for first timers playing the collections in order is a climactic, daunting, and almost terrifying curveball in the game setlist that just screams final boss. With its haunting, washed-out artwork of the little girl in a large gown surrounded by crystals, Gariri's distorted, pain-ridden vocals, and the song straight up having a dubstep break halfway through, littered with non-piano notes, Magnolia is a landmark in Deemo's progression that only gets more and more impactful later on in the game's life cycle. Which means 2 goddamn years after the original game comes out, we're greeted with Deemo 2.0. The actual ending. Both the best thing and the worst thing to ever happen to this cursed game, because on one hand it contains so much of why this game is one of my favourites, but at the same time, only in the mobile gaming industry would we let this kind of shit slide, wouldn't we? Just get the Switch version, don't indulge in the idea that mobile gaming will ever become good, it won't be. Tangents aside, Deemo 2.0 is where things really start to ramp up, with new cutscenes, new songs, and new environments that tie everything up into a nice little bow that calls you a bitch and breaks your kneecaps. Nah shit, the bow is sentient! After this update, everything seems to look rather unchanged until you head into the attic and find that the framed picture on the wall is not only glowing, but upon inspection is actually a secret passageway into a hidden basement in the tower. God, this game can be so cool sometimes. Here we find a piano coated in vines, and we also have the prompt here to play a song like we normally do. But instead of being able to choose the song, the game right away asks us to pick our speed and volume levels. It's very bizarre at first try because you have no clue what you're about to play, to which you're given the opening to the second arc in this story. Suspenseful Third Day by Kairu Underground. Our introduction to Deemo 2.0, which was another perfect choice considering the appearance of the basement. This dingy, swampy room accompanied by a piece opening with loud, wet footsteps and chiming in partway through with woodwind instruments that, when cleared, releases the vines, growing the tree further and unlocking our new album, Deemo's Collection 2. Now, 1A and 1B were all well and good for settling the player into the tower, but Collection 2 is where the momentum really ramps up. Not only are there more rooms to explore in the tower and much more difficult songs to play, but Collection 2 is the point where things start to feel like they're wrapping up and feels like the hype builder of the set, with tracks like Living in the One, Sunset, and eventually the credits theme from the first ending, as well as artwork that has less of a focus on throwing the girl and Deemo into a series of different scenarios and more of a focus on the bond they forged over the course of the game. Collection 2 has this immense air of finality to it, especially when you encounter a locked door coated with vines at what is presumably the highest level of the tower, and it's exciting to just work towards uncovering what's ahead. And this is the point where I say the following. While I warned at the beginning of this video that I would be spoiling the entirety of Deemo, I implore you, if you have not played and finished this game yet, to please close the video down right now, get that done, and come back later. This point in the story can be reached in less than 4 hours, and it is beyond worth it for the payoff you receive. Right, and I think all of this does deliver once you swing those doors open and you're finally greeted with a sight of the outside. The roof of the tower. A garden lined with trees and the trapdoor's light piercing through the sky, with Deemo tasked to continue playing to assemble a staircase and get the girl home. Which he does through the player's input, and after a pure little embrace, we think that's where it ends before Deemo proceeds to head back down the stairs and return to his piano. Somewhat odd, but perhaps he just doesn't wish to leave yet, and when he returns, like always, you're given the prompt to set your volume and speed. Not only is Deemo going to give the girl a send-off, but you are, completely unaware of what piece you're gonna play. Fluqua by Onoken and Rin, a somber piece of farewell that the game has you play before closing things out. No HUD, no pause function, just you and the music. And can we get a quick translation for the first few lyrics? Fluqua lets you reflect. It keeps you in deep thought about what's been going on in the game, and then you start to realise not only was there a fair bit sneaking in every crevice of the game, but some stuff hasn't been sorted out just yet. And that's when the bandage gets ripped off, and Deemo is content to deliver gut punch after gut punch long after this piece is finished. So we had that mysterious portrait at the first ending, we have the girl's introduction song 9.8, which once again is about sacrificing yourself to be reunited with a loved one. We have the artwork for Pulses, which shows the girl hooked up to a heart monitor with the cables for said monitor moving through Deemo, and we have a bunch of Easter eggs to boot. The window in the attic, which when clicked on has a chance of making a heart monitor pulse sound, the wheel that gives the girl some discomfort, the medal on the floor for the winner of a piano concert, and 2 inconspicuous areas in the game world that contain 2 strings of numbers that when used as coordinates show the location of the National Taiwan University Hospital. Yep, we know where this is going, and once Fluqua finishes, we're greeted with the following message. Goodbye, my beloved sister Alice. Oh fuck, it's gonna get me again, isn't it? And that's when the big reveal finally shows itself in the story of Deemo and the little girl Alice. As it turns out that Deemo is a manifestation of Alice's loving elder brother Hans, and a flashback reveals that what sent the two to the tower was a traffic accident that resulted in both of them getting hit by an oncoming truck. And after Hans fades into nothing, we get the quick glimpse of the masked lady, who is revealed to be a second incarnation of Alice, who in the PS Vita exclusive after story, yes I'm being fucking serious here, is a split version of Alice known as Celia, who retained her memories of the accident and tries to make her way to the tower in order to prevent Alice from discovering the truth and letting them stay with Deemo for all eternity. A part of Alice that wanted her to give up on life now that the one she loves is nothing more than a dweller in the tower. Alice finally ascends through the trapdoor and awakes in a bed in the hospital, alone and mourning the death of her brother who sacrificed himself to protect her. I think I'm out. Now you're probably thinking, Joe, hang on a sec, not only does that twist sound insanely obvious because of the hints that you just told us, but it also sounds really generic. Why do you love this twist? Well, the best way to approach it is to not see it as a twist. Its brilliance doesn't come from shocking or surprising you, and this was theorized by fans at least a year before the update came out, further solidifying that making it an update instead of putting it in from the get-go was a bad design choice, but that's besides the point. Firstly, it's just the execution of how this is shown to you. Having to play such a contemplative piece that has you reflect on your experience and make you feel part of the events at play. You were the one who grew the tree. You're the one who worked to find the truth instead of watching it happen, and had to make conscious decisions of where to look in the tower and what to do to progress. Think of it this way. Alice had a wonderful time in the tower. It was a safe, beautiful place where she spent time with a person she made a tight bond with, who played with her and understood her. She even says herself in some of the dialogue that she wants to go home, but is content with staying if it's not a possibility. In essence, you begin to question whether or not it would be best for Alice to expose herself to her hardships and move on with her life, or give up everything to stay with the person who made her happy. That and just the music. The way the traffic accident is set up with light piano, cuts off at the impact to which the rest of the orchestra wells as we fade to a crying Alice in the view of a trembling camera, means that I've finished this game at least 10 to 15 times and it always gets me. There's always tears. It's starting again. And the other reason I love this ending is because we still haven't seen anything yet. We're then met with the credit sequence accompanied by Alice Goodnight, a crippling ballad alongside images of Alice and Deemo and the time they spent together as the vocalist sings on, imploring Alice to not be scared now that she's left her own little wonderland, that Hans is here and gives his farewell. Alice decides to take up piano in memory of her brother, and we unlock not just Fluquois, but another piece. Myosotis. And oh dear god, were we in for a fucking ride. Myosotis sounds initially inconspicuous, a pretty bizarre song name, but it's most likely just a post-game unlock to keep you around long after the emotional climax has passed, but in actual fact is the most memorable moment in the entirety of the game, and an instance of a rhythm game setlist using an emotional climax to kick you while you're down. Deep in the depths of Deemo's collection too, we scroll down to see this new song and are hit with the most chilling sense of deja vu when we're already torn apart by what the game shown us prior. Myosotis by M2U, Guerreri, and Lucy, accompanied by artwork of Alice rising in a gown and veil and ranked in hard mode as level 11. The first level 11 in the series and the follow-up song to Magnolia, the level 10 brutality new players were haunted with when they finished the first ending. And it was intimidating. I already had my heart scrunched up and thrown away after finishing the story, and yet the game had asked me at this critical moment to test my skills in a follow-up to a song that was already a test during my development, with a difficulty level I had no experience with. It was a haunting enigma holding a mysterious power, and I was hesitant to jump in blind. The game basically said to me, you've made it this far, but let's see you handle this. And the song and chart itself? A torturous fan service filled piece. Not only does Guerreri make her return with her emotional singing style, but the opera lines by Lucy add that extra depth of pain-ridden mourning to the vocals after the reveal of Hans's death. The chart is an absolute spam, as filled with misery and anger from the revelations of the story, you're letting out all of your emotions. You're hammering away and trying to keep up with this song that is literally Magnolia cranked to 11, sharing similar motifs in terms of lyrics, chords, and song structure. While Magnolia was the bright hype builder that sprung a few traps on you to leave you wanting more, Myosotis is the dark, relentless punishment. It channels the sorrow of mourning the loss of a loved one and makes use of the gameplay and sound design to provide what is, in my opinion, the greatest ending I have ever played in a game. And that's the T, goddammit. Or at least it was until Deemo 3.0 came out. You know what, I'm just gonna do a more lazy coverage of Deemo 3.0 because this was honestly when I dipped out of the game somewhat. Okay, so Deemo 3.0 was basically the post-game update that came with the new expansion pack that added more story and content after the events of 2.0 and introduced the Forgotten Hourglass. Basically, it let you restart your playthrough, but you unlocked new content and the tower looked very different, implying a sense of growth and independence in Alice as she moved on after Hans passed away. It's kinda cute and exciting seeing it all transpire and figuring out how the repeated playthroughs work, but it really has that air of trying to keep the game going long after its relevance had already passed, and a weird mix in priorities with the writing staff. See, what made Deemo's story work well was the connection to the gameplay and its execution of its presentation and themes, but it was at 3.0 that Rayark thought it was character development and lore that people liked, which couldn't be any further from the truth. So it does become a bit of a slog, especially considering you need to do around 4 extra playthroughs to unlock everything. Deemo's story benefits because it's a game and not because it's an effective standalone story, which means I really don't get stuff like this update or that really unasked for novel adaptation that I can't be bothered to read. And even stuff like the additional songs kind of water down the entire game and make it difficult to ensure everyone has the same cultivated experience. But, however, moreover, I'll go over those grievances later, because 3.0 did add some extra flavor material that I really liked. It basically added more gut punches, and it's why I think the best way to experience the game is as a late adopter on the Switch version, as painful as it is for me to say that. Being a sort of time skip story that shows glimpses of Alice's growth through life without her brother, 3.0's best implementations were a new collectible system and a new song. Said collectibles being moments, images of Alice and Hans, some of them based on song artwork in the game. But the one that stuck out to me the most was the very first one, of Hans in his concert dress sat alone on a stack of overgrown chairs, just like Deemo did in the artwork for Dream, the very first song art I saw. And the game set me off again when I decided to replay Dream out of nostalgia. I thought about that feeling of loneliness I initially applied to Deemo when I first played it. This blank, adorable character I didn't have any prior details of, and it brought so much into perspective when I applied my thoughts from Deemo to Hans. Hans is a musician. A lovely, lonely stranger in a world that doesn't understand him. He had dreams and ambitions he fought tirelessly for that due to his death he will never be able to achieve. And quick personal note I suppose, but as someone who has gone through episodes of feeling alone and not being understood despite having ambitions to share with others, that honestly speaks to me. But he's not in despair over this fact on account of another fantastic, albeit irritating implementation of Deemo 3.0. Deemo has a lot of optional song packs that are there to give the player more to play, but don't necessarily have an impact on the base game. But one pack that I feel was so undeserving of being optional content was M2U X Nycode Volume 2, which contains M2U's Sandglass. Let's do some quick deconstruction here. Sandglass contains artwork of both Alice and Hans, and not only is M2U the sole artist behind this song, but provides the vocals. In Magnolia, Myosotis, and the third follow-up track, Marigold, M2U is not just the composer, but you can hear him providing backing vocals to Gariri. And combining this with the lyrics means that Sandglass isn't just any old DLC song. It is literally a post-farewell piece from Hans's perspective to Alice, reassuring her and asking her to continue moving forward with her life and chasing her dreams, because he made peace with himself and what he lost ages ago, and only asks that the most valuable person in his life is happy. It's an easily missed addition to the game, but when I first heard it, the waterworks returned long after I had already finished the game.
Nevertheless, all I can do is wish you happiness, but miss me, you're not come back to me. Don't be afraid of losing me, and don't the limits on your life. You are worth everything. You must promise me you're not spend time in tears. Let me take away your sorrows just because I'm not around doesn't mean I stop caring.
And that's Deemo. You get what I mean when I said it was a flawed masterpiece? Because the game is riddled with issues, not just mechanical ones like key sounds being a little off or the slider notes being a little unresponsive and finicky, but you can see just by the disjointed way I reviewed this game that it's got a structure that's all over the place and relies so much on playing in a specific way. Yeah, a lot of this had to be added over the years through updates. Yeah, the mobile and PS Vita releases have a rampant DLC problem that only makes the Switch version worth playing. Routine reminder to please get the Switch version. Yeah, that level 11 reveal in Myosotis was cool until Anima, a song you unlocked before Myosotis, got buffed from level 10 to 11, removing some of the impact. Yeah, the ending twist is nice, but before finishing the game you could accidentally root through a DLC pack that shamelessly shows Hans in the artwork. But even if all those flaws are shoved into my face, Deemo still bothered to give a sense of identity, atmosphere, and intentional design to the rhythm game. It gave you a setting, a soundtrack, and mechanics that weave together into a tightly knit package that doesn't feel scattered, purposeless, or out of place like most rhythm games do, something I say with love as it's my favourite genre. Basically, while it didn't do it perfectly, Deemo stands out to me because it's a rhythm game that didn't use the fact that it's a rhythm game to justify shortcomings. It made use of elements in presentation and design that we can find in so many other genres to make something that can match the same critical standards we give to other games. Deemo is a game that fell victim to the ecosystem it was present in, this being the mobile gaming market, and skewed itself somewhat with its drip feed release system, disjointed structure, and overbearing DLC, but I'm still gonna sing its praises on the fact that it tried. And even if we had to wait a year and a half for the new update to come out, it still felt like more of a finished game than Citus 2, because C2 literally exists just to bait people into spending money all without the storytelling elements that actually made Deemo work. Deemo is the rhythm game that tries. It's a game that wasn't content with resting on the minimum needed for fans of the genre to enjoy, and tried going the extra mile with something, anything to give it that extra spark that we find so often in other genres. It's the same reason I praised Dance Central VR a few months back. It could have just been a collection of songs and mechanics, a VR port of the Kinect games, but instead gave you a setting and characters to give itself more depth, impact, and staying power, instead of making the experience purely cold, mechanical, and competitive. And games like these accomplish that while still preserving the core structured appeal of a rhythm game. Pick the song, play the chart, rack up the combo, and didn't need to alienate the audience by being too out there or gimmicky. And it's something I want to highlight with a game like Deemo to understand exactly why so many of us like it. See, a lot of game critique is brushed off as over-analysis that only comes to mind when you really think about it. But no, even if you don't know a thing about games, or you can't phrase things in the most academic way, an element of a game's structure and design, even if you don't directly acknowledge it, still has a part to play in your enjoyment. And there's so much more to this game than just the soundtrack and story are good. And it's because of the core strengths that make Deemo so special that I have a glimmer of hope for Deemo Reborn. Deemo achieved what it set out to do, but its main flaws fall from how scattered and weirdly structured it is. So maybe a complete rerun that allows them to build the game they want to make from beginning to end will only emphasize and improve on its existing pros. And that kind of possibility has me thinking that maybe the genre's gonna evolve in so many different ways in the years to come. But even so, Reborn looks like it's gonna be such a different beast that I don't want us to forget the fantastic original work that gave it the foundation. And that's what I think makes Deemo a good game and why I stuck it at the highest point on my tier list. It's not just a fun game that just so happens to contain a good soundtrack and a short and sweet story about loneliness and loss. It's also an elegant work of art that uses nearly everything in its disposal to provide an experience like no other, even if it uses a tried and true concept that is decades old. But yeah, the soundtrack is also really good. If any of these tracks sound up your street, you will absolutely love Deemo. Deemo took a step forward. A small step, but a step nonetheless into what makes a game more memorable, endearing, and investing. And it's why I think it's a must-play to understand what truly makes rhythm games powerful. What makes you realize that they're not just a silly competitive party genre where you press buttons, but an immersive interactive layer on music, a medium that already contains so much inherent beauty waiting to be tapped and shared with others. Remember when I said in my DJ Hero video that video games combine multiple mediums into one core, and that rhythm games are the interactive extension of music that further channels their emotional energy? It's what makes Deemo work. Music, visuals, gameplay, physical sensations, all mixing and merging together to make something that has changed me, and I will never forget it for as long as I live. Unrelated tangent by the by, but I just googled the novel to do some research and found out that Alice and Hans's parents are characters who die when Alice is 2 years old, meaning they were both orphans during the events of the actual game. What does them being orphans have to do with the theme of the game, Rayark? Do you realise that once you've told a story, you can stop telling it and you don't have to add more shit to it? I think this is honestly like their main weakness. They don't just let a good thing exist, it needs to be constantly oversaturated and watered down until the original work loses all inherent beauty and meaning. It's a very cynical and weird way to approach art. I honestly don't get why I still like and support this company. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this enough times, but if you ever played Citus 2, man, you should really see what the fuck went down in that game. Someone deadass sent me a Reddit thread saying that the game is getting gapped gacha mechanics soon. Gacha in a paid story-based rhythm game. What is actually fucking wrong with you? JOEZCafe is not sponsored in any way by Bailey's chocolate, but it's like the best alcohol that I've ever drank in my entire life, so go for it. Update video coming next month, I guess.